Welcome, everybody. I'm Daniel Golden, the proprietor of Boswell Book Company. We at Boswell are so honored to sort of be the launch event for us it is the launch, because today is the first day on sale for The Assignment, the already acclaimed second YA novel from Liza Wiemer following Hello, or I should say Hello. Liza's gotten wonderful raves from Kirkus, which called the book an important plot-driven story about two teens who stand up for what's right in the face of adversity. School Library Journal, who wrote an important look at a critical moment in history through a modern lens, showcasing the power of student activism. A good choice for fans of Angie Thomas's The Hate You Give and Nick Stone's Dear Martin. Like, whew. And of course, Cinda Lai, who wrote called this a wise and nuanced novel with loving arms while hugging two teens who must confront a popular teacher, also can reach out to all those belittled and honored. For this event, Lisa will be in conversation with the great bookseller Jenny Chou, who champions YA books and also does our school event bookings. So with that said, I'm going to mute myself and hand things over to Jenny Chou and Liza Wiemer. Thanks everybody for coming, and let's give them a big virtual hand.
Okay, hi everyone. I am so thrilled to be chatting with my dear friend Liza about her timely and important novel, which I read back in November. And now today, publication day, you all finally get to read it too. Liza is kind and generous and such a champion of other writers' work. And I'm so happy we're able to be together virtually here on Zoom to finally celebrate her book. You'll see that while parts of the story are disturbing, this is ultimately a book filled with hope and filled with love, because Liza couldn't write any other kind of book. Welcome, Liza. I'm so happy to see you.
Thank you. I'm so overwhelmed. This is just amazing. Thank you all so much for being here to celebrate this incredible event. I mean, I'm a little misty-eyed here because we have people from all over the world that are celebrating with us, and thank you guys. So the story behind The Assignment is that back on July 25th, 2016, I received a message from librarian Wendy Scafaro, and she is up in Syracuse, and I know she's on with us right now. You see us together, and that message absolutely changed life. What ended up happening is Wendy said, would you like to come and come to my school and talk about your debut YA novel, Hello? And we weren't really sure, how this was going to work out, because she had never done an event like this before. So thankfully, I did say yes, because that yes absolutely changed my life. And given that it changed my life, now I can tell you the rest of the story. So Wendy had set up a book event at an independent bookstore, and I was thinking, like, why did she choose a bookstore so far away from where I was staying? As a matter of fact, it was a horrible day. It was pouring rain. And Wendy said, Liza, this is a great indie bookstore. You've got to go to it. So I am a planner, and I decided to get there super early, especially because of the bad weather. If you're looking at the screen, you can see the grocery store. I pulled into this grocery store. I was in desperate need of caffeine, but I could not get out of my car because the parking lot was flooded. And because of that, I ended up staying in my car. And then what ended up happening was I went online. I went on Facebook and I saw this post from my aunt, Bené Brown Katz. And it definitely caught my attention, especially with those capital letters. And oh my goodness, I thought we had, so nice my father wants to talk to us. I thought I had turned that off. So I had spoken, there we go. I opened up my phone and I started reading this, and it said, homework, New York students debate exterminating Jews. So that absolutely caught my attention. And I started reading it, and the very first line announced that I was actually in this small town. And I went, oh my gosh, I looked around and I could not believe that I was there. So I got in touch with my aunt. I got in touch with fellow author Gail Rosengren, and I was like, can you believe this? I'm in this small town, and they gave this anti-Semitic assignment, and I was absolutely in awe of Jordan April and Archer Shirtliff, the two brave teens who refused to do this assignment. And one of my thoughts was that I had to do something about this. I had to get in touch with these teens somehow, but I wasn't going to a high school. I was going to this independent bookstore, and you'll see this is the sign they had. It was a pun with Adele and the cheesehead, because I'm from Wisconsin. And so I decided that I was going to ask the bookstore owner if he would help me get copies of my novel to these teens. I wanted to buy them. I was going to write a note to these kids and just let them know how unbelievably extraordinary I thought they were. And I took 4 steps into this bookstore, and that is when I saw Jordan, and I went, oh my goodness, the world is Jordan. And she said to me, how do you know? And I said, let me show you my phone. And so that is what ended up leading from one thing to the next. So very, very cool. Next slide, I want to share with you some behind the scenes for this novel. On the left side, you will see it actually is the oldest book library that has had continual use in the United States. And I went there right before my book signing, right after I had found out about this assignment. And, you know, I had plenty of time, and I thought, oh, wow, I really love to see their library. So you can see the amazing scenes. Again, it was a rainy, awful day. I was really excited because I saw Gay Polisner's book. You can see it's highlighted there, The Summer of Letting Go. So I remember back then tweeting her and saying, I saw your book in this library, and in the oldest library in the United States. And so this library became the inspiration for the library that Logan works at in my novel. I kind of use that as that inspiration. So another behind the scenes information is that I had to do a tremendous amount of research for this novel. I can tell you that 99.9% of all the information I read, all the interviews I conducted, all the original footage I watched from World War II, the YouTube videos that I watched with Holocaust survivors, the Holocaust survivors that I interviewed, all of that had to get narrowed down into a very small amount. And it was not easy deciding what to use and what not to use. There was a scene, though, that was extremely important to me. And I found out early on through my process from someone by the name of Rachel Schachman. She messaged me on Facebook and she said, Lisa, did you know that in the United States, we actually had a refugee center for World War II European refugees? And I did not. As a matter of fact, we brought in a little less than 1,000 World War II European refugees. Now, I want you to contrast that to the 725,000 German POWs that we brought into this country. Can you imagine if we had saved, so many of those people and done something else with these POWs? It boggles my mind that under 1,000 people ended up being saved and rescued. And that number it's overwhelming. So I read about this refugee center. Ruth Gruber was actually the person who went over to Italy to help bring these individuals into the United States. And she wrote a book about it called Ruth Gruber, The Dramatic Story of 1,000 World War II Refugees and How They Came to America. So I read something on page 129 and 130 that had a profound impact on my life. And that was about, it's the following. I went below to the hospital, the only child of Maria and Morris Montilio of Yugoslavia. 6-month-old Elia was fighting for her life. So baby Elia did indeed pass away. And at the end of this chapter, it says, Elia, we decided, should not be buried at sea. She would come to America, the guest of President Franklin Roosevelt, to be buried in a graveyard in Oswego. Well, that impacted me tremendously. And I was absolutely determined that when I returned to the area to do more research for this book, I had been there for the book signing in April and made arrangements to return in July. And I had to find this grave. So I contacted George Damas, who was the historian for Oswego and also was on the board of directors and a past president for Safe Haven. And I wrote him an email and I said, so Ruth Gruber's Haven and Marie and Morris Montilio's baby is buried in Oswego. The child's name is Elia and was born when Maria was in a concentration camp. Is it possible to see the grave? I would love to show my respect. Do you know the grave? And so he wrote back, he said, the Jewish cemetery, Liza, is not far from the fort. We can plan to go there. So I had planned to meet him and talk with him, go to the museum that talks about the refugee center. And Jordan, Archer, and George and I did indeed go to Riverside Cemetery, and we could not find the grave. And we were looking and looking and looking. George ended up taking off, and I was really feeling down about not finding this grave. And Archer saw just a corner of the stone showing. And you can see from this picture, it was absolutely buried in dirt, and leaves were covering it. And we uncovered this and our hands were just caked with dirt to the point where we had to scrub it. So I am so glad that I felt that compulsion to find her grave, to honor her memory, to honor the sacrifice of her parents. And so that for me is an incredible story. And I ended up incorporating this story into the last part of this novel. So here you can see, this is the fort where the refugees were held. These walls are so incredibly high. But in addition to this, these refugees were kept behind barbed wire. You can see a piece of that fence in the upper right corner. And you can see that, imagine if you had been in a concentration camp and you had been behind barbed wire, to come to America, the land of freedom, and then experience that. And so for many, it was traumatizing. And the good news is that the community of Oswego really did embrace these refugees. And they were able to leave and spend, I believe, like 6 hours outside. They did have to return every evening for sure. And what is interesting is that after the war, they could not they were not free. They ended up remaining at Fort Ontario until January 1946 and even into February. So even though the war was over, the United States did not know what to do with these refugees. The vast majority of them wanted to stay in the United States. And so eventually that did happen. You'll see in the bottom corner that those are barracks, and they were former Army barracks. They converted these so that families could stay together, but walls were really thin and they did not have much privacy. The Safe Haven Museum is hoping to rebuild these, at least one barrack. So here's the outside of the museum. That is Kevin Hill. He was the president at the time. So the interior right there, that again was incorporated into the novel in my own creative way. So, we talk about hatred, we talk about the impact of, speaking up against injustice and symbols of hate. And while I was walking down the streets with Archer and Jordan, we saw this flag. So it is sadly prevalent. So another thing that I wanted to share with you, the man on the left is my grandfather. He has this fun pose. I love this picture of my grandpa Jack. I was really inspired by the kind of person my grandfather was. He was an incredible storyteller. He was so warm and incredibly welcoming. So when I was writing Cade's father, who is really social, they run in. By the way, just some behind the scenes information. The inn was inspired by my Aunt Benet and Uncle Jeff, who used to own a bed and breakfast. My husband and I have at times have thought, oh, wouldn't that be a cool thing to do, to own a bed and breakfast? So that was my inspiration for that. So the grandfather in the story was very much inspired by my own grandfather. On the right, you're going to see Jack DeGola and his wife, Renee. And the main character, Cade, his grandfather talks about saving a Jewish man when he was in Poland, and he talked about this incredible story about what this person went through. But Cade only gets bits and pieces of the story of the Jewish boy that his grandfather saved in Poland. Well, that story was inspired by Jack DeGola. He was a neighbor of mine, and I was so deeply moved and deeply touched by his story. So finally, the last thing I would like to share is something that did not make it into the novel. It is a little over 3.5 minutes long. If all the authors, if you have all entered your name, your title of your book, and either a link to your website or a link to Goodreads, please do. What I would like everyone else now to do in comments is please put your name and the place where you're from or where you're living right now. It would be great. And this is going to be for the giveaway. You can, please feel free to do this while we're watching what I consider a very powerful video of Gerda Weissman Klein. It's how she met her husband, Kurt Klein. Gerda won the Presidential Medal of Freedom from President Obama. She is just an extraordinary woman, and I so wish I could have included her story or parts of her story in this novel, but I couldn't, and so I'd like to share it with all of you now.
My very clear view of freedom and liberation came that morning when I stood in this doorway of that abandoned factory. And I saw a car coming down the hill. And the reality of that came when I saw the white star on its hood and not the swastika. And there were two men in that car. One jumped out.
I saw some skeletal figures trying to get some water from a hand pump, but over on the other side, leaning next to against the wall, next to the entrance of the building, I saw a girl standing, and I decided to walk up to her.
I remember that aura of that awe, of the disbelief in daylight, to really see someone who fought for our freedom, for my ideals. And he looked like God to me.
And I asked her in German and in English whether she spoke either language, and she answered me in German.
And I knew what I had to say. And I said to him, "We are Jewish, for a very long time. At least to me it seemed very long." He didn't answer me. And then his own voice betrayed his emotion. He was wearing dark glasses. I couldn't see his eyes. He said, "So am I."
I asked about her companions.
He said, "May I see the other ladies?" A form of address we hadn't heard for 6 years. I told him most of the girls were inside. They were too ill to walk. And he said to me, "Won't you come with me?" I didn't know what he meant. So he held the door open for me and let me precede him. And that was the moment of restoration, of humanity, of humaneness, of dignity, of freedom.
We went inside the factory. It was an indescribable scene. There were women scattered over the floor on scraps of straw, some of them quite obviously with a mark of death on their faces.
I took him to see my friends.
The girl who was my guide made sort of a sweeping gesture over this scene of devastation and said the following words: "Noble be man, merciful and good." And I could hardly believe that she was able to summon a poem by the German poet Goethe, which is called The Divine, at such a moment. And there was nothing that she could have said that would have underscored the grim irony of the situation better than what she did.
And this first young American of Liberation Day is now my husband. He opened not only the door for me, but the door to my life and my future.
All right. Yeah, that's very
Lisa, is there
powerful.
anything else you'd like to tell us about your inspiration for writing this book?
You know, there are just so many people that I met, and I drew upon students that I was very fortunate to connect with at Arrowhead High School. I met someone named Cade, and that became my Cade. And I met a Mason, and Mason became my Mason. And I took names of friends. Some of you are watching right now. You might be surprised. You're in this novel. So you never know if you see your name. That's where I get that kind of inspiration. And yeah.
Well, that's what happens when you know a writer, isn't it? You could end up in somebody's book.
Exactly, exactly.
Yes. I want to take this minute to thank our co-sponsors, the Harry and Rose Sampson Family Jewish Community Center. And then were you going to do a little reading from your book?
Yes. So I'm only going to read just the beginning.
Wonderful.
Because, okay. Ta-da! All right. So I really struggle with beginnings, and I'm going to share a little bit about that. This is the beginning of the novel. And just a little background. As I said, I really, really struggled, and I went back and forth with my editor, and finally she said, okay, why don't you have a introduction, and it needs to have punch. So I said, you mean like the Twilight Zone? And she's like, yes, exactly. That's what I want from you. So this is what I came up with. What you're about to read is a fictionalized story based on an actual assignment given to students in a New York high school education program. It's an assignment that could be given anywhere, any country, any town, any school, even yours.
Wow, that's chilling.
So yes, it was like finally, but I wanted to share with you a few of my major failures. So I got locked in this idea. I named Logan, and this came from, I chose Logan's name because I had been speaking with an author by the name of Laura Harrington. And
let's clarify, Logan is a girl.
Exactly.
Yes.
So here is what happened. She was recommending agents to me, and she had mentioned that I should reach out to Logan. And I made the wrong assumption that Logan was a boy. And she definitely corrected me. And I was so grateful for that lesson, because we really do need to be very careful and very conscientious of gender neutral names. And so that really motivated me. And then of course, the real teen who was involved, Jordan oftentimes was, called a boy. And so that made me even more determined to choose a name that was gender neutral. But the problem is those assumptions. So how was I going to address it? Here is how I started it. And I can also thank Gail Rosengren for getting rid of this awfulness. All right, this is how I was going to start this novel. 5 important things to know about me and my best friend, Logan Marsh. Logan is a girl Nearly every day, someone points out that Logan is a boy's name. Tip, do not mention this to her unless you're an asshole. And in that case, I carry duct tape and will use it. Just kidding, maybe. Okay, so bad. And then it went on. And then, okay, totally ditched that. And let's see. I had another one.
Do you think you had?
Yeah, it was just, I think I had at least 100 different starts. No lie. I would say that I revised and edited and tried different versions. I had a scene at one point where I thought, maybe Kate and Logan would end up in jail. I was going in so many different directions. And at one point I thought I was going to start with the assignment and do that as a prologue. And that got nixed, and I just didn't know. But I'm so pleased with how it started. And that's what a great editor is for. They will spark something within you. And that's what transpired from that.
And get you onto the right path.
She sure did.
Yes, where I think you ended up on the right path.
Thank you.
There's a lot of grown-ups here tonight, and certainly this is a book that can be enjoyed by adults, but you wrote the assignment for teens. And what do you hope teens will take away from this book?
So I think really it's exactly what I hope for adults and teens, because I think adults need this as much. Without a doubt, yes, it's geared toward teens, and better for people to get this younger than at my age. What is important is that all of us have the ability to become upstanders instead of bystanders. We absolutely must speak up against racism, anti-Semitism, xenophobia, anti-LGBTQIAP+. We cannot allow this. And something that I was thinking about with this assignment, where this teacher asked the students to pretend that they're Nazis and advocate for the murder of Europe's 11 million Jews. What the Nazis advocated for was uniformity. And they were trying to create an Aryan race, which is the absolute opposite of who we are as human beings. We're all unique. We are all special. We all have a beautiful spark within us that we have to share with this world. But the world oftentimes dumps on people and keeps people from seeing that goodness and seeing that beauty, and can at times really just pile on the dirt so that we're not able to fulfill what we're here on this earth to do. And so this novel really shows how critical it is that each one of us must be valued. We must respect diversity. And every person has a unique way of speaking up. Not everyone's going to be a Cade and Logan. There are secondary characters in this novel: Heather, Daniel, Mason, just to name a few, who speak up in their own way. So I believe that this novel will give all individuals a moment to pause and think about what they would do in this situation. Maybe when they were in high school, they wouldn't have been able to speak out. I don't know if I would have been able to speak out. But if we are to look at an injustice today, I would hope that this book would spark that courage within to do something, not to be silent, but to speak up.
Well, when I was reading, that's what I was thinking. What would I do in this situation? And I hope that a lot of your readers will read your book and think the same thing. What would I do? Can I be an upstander? Can I help in some different way? But basically, can I stand up? Can I speak up? And that comes across so beautifully in your book.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. We have questions from our audience. The first one is from Hannah. What was the hardest thing about writing your book?
Well, without a doubt, that first chapter was torture. I think it was very much deciding what to include and what not to include. I started out writing this novel, and I wasn't paying attention to word count. I believe it was somewhere in the 105,000 words, somewhere around there. When I submitted it to agents, it was down to 85,000, and my incredible editor, Beverly Horowitz, expected that I was going to cut. So that's what she said to me. She said, you need to cut. And she didn't tell me what to cut. She just said, get to it. And I got it down to around 66,400 words.
Really?
So, yeah.
Wow. You really did do some cutting there.
I cut out some of the secondary characters who had their own chapters.
Okay.
I cut the reporter. I basically got rid of some of the adult chapters. Those were the ones that I got rid of. And I don't miss them at all.
And you still ended up with some very powerful secondary characters.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Did you want to do one of our giveaways?
Yes, please. What is our first number?
Okay, our first number is
23.
23.
All right, so Jenny is going to count not from the authors, but from when everyone was putting in their names and where they're from. So the 23rd person is going to be able to select any one of the authors who are here, not my book, but the authors that are here with us tonight. Please scroll through and look at all of those, look at all of the authors, take a look at their books, and you will privately message Jenny which book you choose.
Okay, I'm going to put my email address into the chat so that you can message me. And then, so I'll do that in just a moment. Okay, and then we have a question from Kathleen. And Kathleen's question is, would you talk about what your daily writing life looks like?
All right, I have a wild writing process. When I am in writing mode, the rest of the world pretty much does not exist for me. I basically started this when my kids were really, really little. When they went to bed, I started writing. So that would mean that I would start writing at 8 o'clock at night, and sometimes I would go until 4 in the morning. And then I'd get up with the kids. Writing has a tendency to fuel me, and I will write until I drop. Sometimes I will put my head down, write on my keyboard, and then go up to bed and sleep for whatever amount I need to sleep, and then get up again. The same thing happened with the assignment, except for my children are all now grown adults out of the house. So I will write until I can't write anymore. I need to go into that world, and that world very much is my real world. Everything else just kind of like comes into this world that I've created in my head. So let's say I get started at 7 in the morning. I might, go until midnight. Then I might fall asleep at midnight. I'll get up at 3:30, and I will start again with very little breaks. Not healthy, and I am not the kind of person that can write a novel in a couple months. It can take me years. So when I'm in that mode, and that includes, you know, revising and that kind of stuff, but when I'm in that mode and I'm drafting, I am absolutely entrenched in this. I think what's most important for all the writers out there is that you need to find your own process. Whatever works for you is what's important. Do not change your process if it's working. So, you know, if you can only write 5 minutes a day, 5 minutes is perfect. I don't expect anyone to adopt what I do. So, great question. Thank you.
We have a lot of questions here, Liza.
Awesome.
The first one is kind of for both you and me. Have you gotten many schools or classes to use the book in their curriculum? And I did send out a email to my entire distribution list asking who would like to host Liza in their class. And if you are an educator and would like to host Liza and you didn't get my email because you're not on my distribution list, please email me. And I'd love to work with you on getting Liza to speak to your class. Again, I'll put my email in the chat, but it's just Jenny, Jenny, @boswellbooks.com.
Wonderful.
Liza, did you want to talk about that at all, about your class?
Yeah, there's a lot of exciting behind the scenes things that are going on, things I can't right now, you know, talk about, but it is really exciting that there are school districts considering utilizing this book as part of curriculum. So yeah, I'm just holding my breath and waiting to see what transpires. I think it would make a phenomenal book to be used in schools.
So Susan wants to know if your book is going to be released in Europe.
It is. It has already sold to Italy, South Korea, Russia, and Poland. And we are waiting and anticipating, and hopefully we'll hear some good news for some other countries.
That's so exciting. And I can't wait to find out if they keep the same cover, or if they change to a different artist or a different design. That'll be so neat.
Yeah, and it's also out in audiobook. As a matter of fact, my son Justin started listening to it today, and he was so excited about it that I had to start listening to it, and the performances blew me away. So we're with Boswell, so I absolutely want to encourage you to, you know, buy the hardcover. But if you are an audiobook fanatic or an educator who has students that you think could benefit from an audiobook, you will not at all be disappointed with this phenomenal, phenomenal performance. Performances, there are 10 performers for this audiobook. It's blew me away.
Liza,
Okay.
may I say something about
Hi, Daniel.
the audiobook?
Yes.
We finally registered with Libro FM, which is a way for independent bookstores to sell people audio downloads. So if you go to, I just made sure you're on Libro FM because there's some books that have exclusives with somebody else. But you are definitely on Libro FM, and when you register, you put in the bookstore you want to be linked to, and Boswell is now one of the stores. So that's all I had to say about that.
Yay, that's great. I'm so happy to hear that. I can tell you that it is, you know, if that's your thing, you will enjoy it. And I highly, highly recommend going through our independent bookstore.
Okay, so let's see. I'm looking for another question here. Liza, are you on the audio at all?
I am. I read my dedication, and I read part of my author note. I read my author note, my dear reader's letter, and then I read just a small section of the acknowledgments, not all the names. It's just some of the background information, behind the scenes information that I read. And I can tell you it was not easy. We have Evan Wolkenstein, I'm sorry, Evan. Evan, I believe, is on with us. He narrated his entire book. I am in awe of him. I could not do that. Anyone who narrates their own book, I am in awe of you. It was not easy to do just the tiny little bit of the stuff that I did. So if you want someone to read a great book by someone who narrated his own book, get Turtle Boy.
So let's see, one more question is from Hannah, who wants to know how you do such a great job of getting into a teenager's head.
Well, thank
Melissa
you.
wants to know that too. So we have two people who want to know that. They both think you do that so naturally.
I am deeply honored with that question. And so it's very important to me to capture that voice. And it also needs to be in language that can be timeless. So what I do is I talk to teenagers, and I interviewed many, many, many teens. And for Blair, Blair is Logan's cousin. Just a quick, awesome story about that, our Blair. So I have a neighbor, Liam. He was a senior at Nicolay High School at the time. And I saw Liam on the street, and I said, Liam, I need a name for a female character. Who do you most admire? And he immediately said Blair Wales. And Blair also is a neighbor of mine. And so Blair became my Blair. And I just thought that was so cool that I could honor his input in that way and also honor Blair. And I talked to Blair, I talked to her sister, Ava, and I talked to many of their friends. I had teens, read some of these sections and got their feedback. This was really important to me to embrace that. This has been an incredible journey. I want to share with all of you, if you haven't seen this, I've had it all over
because that
social
was
media.
the next question.
Oh, okay,
Everyone
great.
wants to know about the sticker in the back.
Awesome. So here it is. So Humankind, welcome here. This was designed by my son, Justin. I had my own idea in my head. He completely nixed it and did a much better job. What's so cool about these are they are removable. So you can put them on doors, you can put them on windows, you can put them on laptops. They are removable. I'll be passing these out when I go to school visits, or perhaps sending them until we're back and able to actually see each other in person. But I'm definitely willing and thrilled to be able to send these out for everyone that already pre-ordered the book. They have already gone in the mail. And I will be sending out some more for those who filled out the form. But if you'd like them, especially classroom teachers, librarians, anyone who's going to put it up and share this very special message that's in the novel, I would love for you to embrace Humankind, welcome here. And then we have, our bookmarks and of course the awesome book.
Lisa, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. This has been amazing. I was able to scroll through and look at all the names every single one of you. Please know how much it really means to me that you were able to join me here tonight and celebrate this momentous, this incredible moment in my life. It's been over a 3-year journey to get to here, and to celebrate with all of you is just, it means everything. So I hope that you will read the book. I hope you will love the book. And if you do, please tell people, because, that's how the word gets spread. So thank you so much for joining me. And I look forward to celebrating with all of you writers out there. If you've got books coming out, I look forward to celebrating your special day. And for those of you who are writing, I encourage you, please keep going. I always say to myself, perseverance is the act of true role models and heroes. The only way you can finish your book is by perseverance. The book before the assignment is still in my laptop. I spent over 6 years working on that novel, and it didn't go anywhere. It's still there. So don't give up, keep going. You got this. I believe in you. You need a cheerleader. I am here for you. So thank you for being a cheer for me. And I wish all of you a great night.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us here tonight. This was a really special event with Liza. And again, if you're interested in having Liza speak to your classroom, please email me at Jenny, Jenny, @boswellbooks.com. Or if you'd just like to be on my distribution list.
What a great fall we have for school events. So thank you, Jenny, for all the work that you do. Thank you, Liza. It's been just such an amazing journey watching you write the book, hearing all the details. It's amazing that it's here. I know you're going to just have so much success with it. And I have to say, the in-person events are great, but Liza, you made this virtual event so special in a lot of ways, and seeing people from all over the country. This was almost better than an in-person event. So thanks.
In some ways, I have to agree with you. I mean, I'm a part of Jewish Mavens, Kidlit Mavens on Facebook, and I see so many of you, and I'm just tremendously grateful to be sharing this. So thank you all. This is truly, truly, truly remarkable.
Really a wonderful event, Liza. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks,
Good night,
everybody.
everyone.
Good night.
Good night.